It's strange to say that I'm both excited and sad about why we are gathered here today. The reason I'm excited is I'm going to have a chit chat with two young women who I revere and cherish and who are storytellers, and their stories are global. Kanya is an original freedom writer, and her story is a part of the Freedom Writer's Diary. Jackie is a beloved actress and was able to take a combination of Kanya and a freedom writer named Bunny and bring their stories to life in the Freedom Writers film. And so for years, people have been reading and watching their stories unfold. But the reason we are gathering today is there's this sense of urgency and a call to action, and the hashtag stop Asian American Pacific Islander hate. Because the world is not right, the world is not normal, and there's been so many hate crimes, not just here in America, but abroad. So we're going to talk about race. We're going to talk about inequality. We're going to talk about people who are bullies at bully pulpits and fan those fires. It's going to be emotional, it's going to be telling, and it's going to be personal. And so what I want to do first and foremost is do a little temperature check for both of you, because this wave of hate crimes is so real and so relevant in your lives and in your community. How are you feeling about our subject today? Hashtag stop AAPI hate.
I'm so angry, upset, scared for my family, for my sons, for everybody. Just like what's going on, and we can't be numb to this. We can't allow this to go on. You know, we have to feel that this matters, that we can't be numb, that it's okay for things to be okay the way it is. It's not okay at all.
What I love about my sweet Kanya is, as a freedom writer, she's an activist, not just an author, but she's also an advocate for the whole human race. And so I love that even though we're speaking specifically of discrimination within the Asian community, you are a humanist and you don't want discrimination in any community. So I'm proud of that. Jackie, your face is on the screen. Your face is in people's homes, on their TV sets, and for all those cool kids on their gadgets. So what I love about you, about being a storyteller on the big screen, is you have credibility. People look at you and say, I look like you, and I talk like you, and I want to be like you. So if there's a kid at home that wants to be like you, how could you empower them about using their voice during these uncertain times?
Yes. I mean, I thank you so much for that. I mean, I think for me personally, it had always been a struggle to imagine myself being seen in a Hollywood kind of way, to actually be in a film and be seen. And I think being someone who's, Filipino or, Southeast Asian, someone who's, with this complexion as an Asian person, being seen on films so new for me. And I think that it trips me out. I think back at like being in the film, and I'm like, I can't believe I was actually able to, in a way, to channel Kanya and Bunny and to channel myself, to represent myself. It is insane to me when I think about it, because I didn't have that growing up.
I got chills just now when you said that.
So I mean, that being said, for kids that are for especially Asian kids who are not considered, I mean, the model minority myth is a myth, but especially the Asian kids that just never even were considered the model minority, like, which is these characters that were like the bad Asians or whatever, you know what I mean, in the hood. God, I mean, I think it's an honor to be able to represent and to have a voice. And I think, what I would say to them is push hard and kick it and fight, because that's what we have to do, that's what I think of that.
I'm going to say a wave of emotion just washed over me, because you said some words effortlessly that are loaded. Bad kids.
Yeah.
Model minority.
Yeah.
Kids that live in the hood. And I know when you're saying that, I want to go to you, my sweet Kanya, because what you wrote about in the Freedom Writer's Diary was a singular image. I'm going to get emotional about wanting desperately to be perceived as a lotus flower. Taking what Jackie said about being of Asian descent, you were not the model minority. Being poor and being a genocide survivor yourself. Tell our listeners and our watchers about what that image of a lotus flower is and how you want to project, how you want to be seen.
Model. I never thought of myself as a model. If anything, I thought of myself as being invisible. My parents survived the genocide, and when it came to America, it's just the language barrier, the cultural difference, being different, being the skin tone that I am. I was always picked on growing up throughout school, throughout my whole life until you came into my life. I was pretty much, it felt like I didn't matter. I was invisible. I didn't care about anything. Like coming from a country, war-torn country that slaughtered almost 2 million people, and just coming here, there's like this heaviness of that I always felt like, why did this happen to me? Like, why am I not like normal other kids? I always felt like, why couldn't I have been born to a different family or a different culture? I always like yearned to be somebody else that I wasn't throughout my whole life until I really had to do some inner work and dig deep and to really come to terms and acceptance of who I am and living my story. And then being able to tell my story from a place of, I went through that, all the pain, the identification of trying to be somebody I'm not, trying to be cool, being bullied, to just somebody believing in me, and saying that, and just teaching education, just love and acceptance and awareness about everything that went on. Through junior high school, the time in the early 1990s in Long Beach, I grew up where we weren't allowed to play with other kids that were not Asians. The Mexican kids didn't want to play with us, and they called us, dog eaters, comments like that, and I would walk a certain way, avoiding, the house, knowing that I would be bullied, crossing, their fence, or going to school. You kind of just stick to your own kind. It was not until room, 203 that learning about history and learning about friendship, crossing boundaries. It wasn't about identifying that person is this color and that color. It was just, that was Tiffany, no, that was Erica, that was Tony. It's like, I didn't see colors.
I mentioned the lotus flower because Kanya writes about this image, and a lotus flower, as she writes, is this beautiful dainty flower that grows out of the mud and the muck and is so regal, and you are so regal, and you portray her and Bunny alike. So the scene in the film that I think you did so beautifully is you're coming into your 9th grade year, and when Kanya and Bunny were coming out of junior high, they put on this persona that they were really tough, and they kind of dressed like gangsters, and it was an act. If I look tough and I act tough, then I'm not going to get bullied. Yeah. And in the scene in the film where you are asked to stand on the line and you ask a question about if a refugee camp counts, when I asked if you've ever been incarcerated, unbeknownst to you, Kanya was born in a refugee camp. So you embodied that moment. And I think in the film, when you make that decision to actually step forward and stand on that line, you're paying homage to her heritage. You're paying homage to a family torn apart by a genocide in Cambodia. So what does that feel like to be in that presence?
Oh my God. Right now I'm just like, I mean, no, I didn't know that. I didn't know that about you, Kanya. And I mean, right now I just feel extremely honored, you know? I mean, I think for me at the time, you know, because I was a teenager going through my own little microcosm of something very similar, like in the sense of, you know, just being kind of an outcast, you know, in my own personal life. I just was kind of in my own like bubble of like, okay, like I'm just bringing this character to life that I can relate to. And now, so many years later, as an adult looking back at it, I'm riveted by how there's so much of a parallel. It's like how they say like intergenerational trauma, or like, you know, just all these like, it's almost like this weird like, it's like a sci-fi connection of like, you know, of emotions and like intersecting like histories. And I think it's really beautiful, and I feel really honored and riveted. I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea. But at the same time, there's this intuition and this feeling of knowing too that it's so meaningful. There was something so real about it that I did feel in my gut about this story, even though I didn't know this actual fact, you know? And I think that's kind of magical and amazing, you know? And I just feel really honored to have been able to like participate and like just lend myself to like help like bring, you know, the story to life and give it whatever it needs for other people to be able to learn from it. So I just feel extremely like, oh my God.
You know, and you both have talked about with your Asian culture, there seems to be this unspoken hierarchy. Both of you have grandparents who were of Chinese descent. You also have Chinese and Cambodian descent, and you are Chinese and Filipino. Mm-hmm. You both mentioned skin color. When I look at you guys, you're beautiful. You're just, you know, like any Southern California kid. You've been kissed by the sun. But let's talk about skin color, because it's almost this unspoken rule that if you have been kissed by the sun, that's a bad thing. And I want to understand that for those that don't understand that kind of intrinsic racism and socioeconomic bonds within the Asian community, is skin color a factor?
Absolutely.
Huge factor.
Yeah.
Automatically, you're just kind of coded, oh, this person is from that socioeconomic background and their education, blah, blah, blah. Already, it's kind of like,
Seriously.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes. Socioeconomic profiling and beauty standards too. Like I remember, I mean, I've heard it in my family. I hate to say it, but it's like, you know, I was born this color. You know, I was sun-kissed out the womb. Yeah. And the womb got me. And you know, it's like there's always a little bit extra excitement when like a baby's born and they're more like porcelain skin, you know, like beautiful girl. You know, it's like oh darker brown girl. Oh okay. You know what I mean? It's sad, but it's true. I mean, it's a real thing. You know, I think colorism in the Asian community is a real thing that a lot of people don't want to talk, or is not really talked about.
It's not talked about.
It's not talked about, but it's known.
Yes.
You know?
It's just
so let's talk about it. I'm fascinated by this. Do you feel that there's clearly prejudice against the darker shades?
Yes.
Is there a hierarchy, do you think, even the shades that are represented on a screen?
Absolutely.
On a television? So tell me about that, for those of us to try to stop that prejudice from being perpetuated.
Oh my goodness. I mean, absolutely. I mean, for myself, like all the Asian actresses or all the Asian people that would be on film, you know, on the silver screen would always be most identify as East Asian. So usually the lighter skin, Chinese, Japanese, Korean. And that is not to say there's no such thing as, you know, anyone from those groups that are of a darker skin shade. But what I mean is that, you know, to be a light-skinned Asian person or to be fair-skinned is always just like the most visible in social media, in pop culture, in the media and all media, you know what I mean? And it's like from, I think, yeah, from TV to film all the way down to like households, you know, where it's just kind of like, I mean, it's historical too. It's like, you know, if you're brown skinned, that means you're out in the sun because you're a farmer or a slave, a servant. You know what I mean? It's all tied to those things, you know. And it's crazy to think that even now in 2021, it's like just now I feel like there is a little more visibility for Southeast Asian culture, you know. But for so long, I feel like I feel like Freedom Writers was like the first movie I could really think of where you saw someone who's a character who's Cambodian, you know. And then I mean, there are other like few independent films that may have like done that as well, yes, but not in like a big like film like this, or you know, you don't really have brown Asians on TV, you know?
Well, you know what I love that we're doing with this courageous conversation today is it's the people that have the power that have to do more than just putting out a statement. You know, if you watch any television right now, everyone is putting out these statements for their network or radio ads or even companies. But you can't just put out a statement, you have to do.
Absolutely.
So what I loved is they hired you.
Yeah.
Our book spotlights you. So what does that mean about giving voice to the potpourri of communities that you're from, the colors of skin that you represent? How important is that for young people to see that representation?
Oh my God, I think it's extremely important. I think it's like, you know, I think there's a lot of, there's also a belief that, I've heard this before too, because as like an Asian actor, you know, people will say, oh, well, there are lesser Asian roles, so that means that there's lesser Asian actors, so there's less competition, so it's easier for you. You know, and it's like, no, actually, that means there's less opportunity, so there's less growth, you know, for Asian actors. And, you know, fact of the matter is, like, I have a bigger chance of booking a role that is open to all ethnicities as opposed to an Asian role, because a lot of people, you know, especially growing up, didn't see me as the typical Asian girl, like geeky, like I don't
totally
condone this at all, but the stereotype of nerdy, fair-skinned, geeky Asian girl who's really good at school, like that was so never ever me, you know. And as an actor, it's like that. Even now, as I speak, that's not me. And I would have a bigger chance of booking it's a blind ethnicity, no ethnicity attached to a role, but it's just all about character. So anyway, that being said, I feel like, yeah, the powers that be do need to have more opportunities, but also people that want to do something, like Asian people that want to act, for instance, they shouldn't let the fact that it's such a small, there's less visibility stop them. Because I think I've heard this before where they're like, oh, well, there aren't that many good Asian actors. Oh, no, there's not many good roles for Asian actors because there's not many good Asian actors. Excuse me. I mean, then it becomes a conversation like chicken or the egg. It's like, well, maybe if there was more importance, more value added to the idea of Asian people in the arts, you know, instead of like being pressured to be something else because they feel that there's no room for them in whatever Hollywood. You know, so it's a lot of different things. It's a back and forth, but
I think what's going to happen that's interesting in 2021 is hindsight is 2020. So we can look back, and I think of some of the films that I saw when I was younger. You know, a John Hughes film had such horrific Asian caricatures.
Oh my God.
And I'm hopeful now when I've gone back and watched a film like Pretty in Pink, and there's moments that are cringeworthy, and I think we are perpetuating these stereotypes
absolutely
on the screen, and it becomes innocuous. People think, well, it's in a movie, so that's the way it is.
It's okay, yeah. Actually, that's Kanya and I just earlier were talking about how often like the Asian community is always like the butt of jokes, you know, and I think it's because of this like historical narrative in media, in TV and film that Hollywood perpetuates, that is like, it's okay to make fun of Asian people because they've been a caricature for so long, and it still carries on today, you know. And then the Trump administration using all that really terrible rhetoric into now, where it's like, now it's obvious, it was always a terrible joke, it was always racism, but now it's just violence.
Yeah.
It's not just bullying and, you know, mean like, oh, come on, laugh at it, take a joke. No, it's actual now it's culminated into violence. And so now where are we at, you know?
I want to talk about that because you are a survivor and your parents are survivors of a genocide. And so what I intuitively knew that could happen happened. When the pandemic hit, your mom was triggered. As so many survivors, you know, when you're having food taken off shelves and those first few weeks of the pandemic where we didn't have enough information, I'm sure your mother, who lived through a war, went to a refugee camp, came to America very poor, psychologically probably had a lot of triggers. Mm-hmm. And then to hear the then president say the China flu or the Kung flu, and to perpetuate that from a place of power. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that for you, because you were living that truth of seeing your mother panicking and fearful, and society panicking and fearful. Mm-hmm. And then someone in a place of authority and power perpetuating these horrible stereotypes. So what was that like initially when you heard those horrible stereotypes and he was never held accountable, and then others also uttered those horrible stereotypes?
It's just all triggered symptoms of like a civil war. You know, it started political statements like that, and just, you know, like what happened in Cambodia, you know, that they took over. For example, they tell people in the city in Phnom Penh to pack all your stuff, you know, and to leave the city. You're going to be coming back in a few days. So they left the city with just, you know, whatever they can carry with them into the jungles, into the fields. But they didn't know that they were being led off to be killed.
And for viewers, the Pol Pot regime in Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge, targeted one half of Kanya's family. They went after the intelligentsia. They went after people who were learned and scholarly, who knew better, who could fight back. So half of your family was being tricked into giving up all their worldly possessions,
yes.
Lured to their death. Mm-hmm. And then on your father's side, because they were working the land, they were also suddenly put on this pedestal because they weren't fighting back. So that the second this pandemic hit, your mother must have been that young girl in Cambodia.
Yes. Again, the whole, it's just like we went to Costco, how many trips a day? Our house became like a storefront, you know, with like how many toilet papers or supplies, and it was just like, you know, going back to the war, even something like salt that we take for granted and only costs a few less than $1 was like worth more than gold. You know, there was nothing to eat. And then all that, and she kept saying, you don't know how it is to not have food to eat. And I was like, oh my God, like, I really don't. I really don't. And I really feel bad. You know, that even my aunt talks about it, like, she didn't have her period for years because there was no food.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people don't realize is for survivors, Holocaust survivors, genocide survivors, when you're starving, your body shuts off because your body intuitively knows I can't carry a child to term. So the fact that your mom stopped having her period, it's a blessing that she got it back to have you. But I know that must have been so painful for her because I don't think she was ready to be a mother when she conceived you.
Yeah, no, my parents were arranged they kind of, you know, they paired you off with, I don't know, it was just like a jungle, a mess that you gave people power and they took it out of hand and they went to war. And they paired people up with the dark skin Asian, like the darker skin Cambodian with the lighter skin, you know, killed off whoever said, who seemed educated. Mm-hmm. You wore glasses, you know, anything. You were just target for any reason. It was just, they were hungry to kill people off. Mm-hmm. I don't understand, you know, till today I don't understand. that something like that so horrific can happen. And it starts with the comments of going back to your darker skin. Starts something small as, oh yeah, you know, you're fat. Oh, yes, the labeling, those like small remarks that kind of builds momentum over time. Like, oh yeah, you know, say that to me again. And then after a while, and then it culminates into this hatred, and it got acted out.
My heart is breaking, and I know that for you as an activist, what I've loved watching is your activism rise in this moment of speaking up and speaking out. And so what was that like, knowing folks that did come here out of necessity and wanting to know there's this American dream, and then Americans saying things like a China flu, Americans saying Kung flu, Americans fetishizing women.
Oh my God.
So talk about that, because I know you're an activist, and I know you're feeling her pain right now.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah.
Talk about those feelings of watching these things unfold over this last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's surreal, but at the same time, it's something that, and it's really horrible to say, but it's something that's been known. I think that everything is just boiling over right now, which is absolutely unacceptable, and it's a shame that it's had to come to this. But I mean, it's just like it's like the rage and anguish is just like I remember when I first heard about what happened in Atlanta, didn't even want to like. I knew what happened. I found, you know, I read the articles and this and that, but after immediately reading it, I kind of like shut off. I was like, I don't want to think right now about it. I just don't want to think, because I was so furious, because to me that was the exactly. I mean, like, not only have just women's bodies been abused throughout all of history, but Asian women being basically sacrificed because of a white supremacist, like, insane person who now, and then how the media wanted to turn it into, oh, well, you know, he's a sex addict, oh, he was having a bad day, and then like people in power just being like, and it's like, you know, a black kid will get shot for having a toy in his pocket that he's reaching for, but this guy who plans an attack to kill these women and somehow kind of rationalizes it because it's like, oh, well, they're sex workers. They could have been sex workers. It's a seedy place. I mean, to me, it all ties into this idea of colonialism, and also just like Asian women being fetishized all throughout history. Oh, well, they're complimenting you. That's just like a compliment. You're a hot Asian girl. Oh, well, you know, Asian girls, all this stuff. And it's not a compliment. It's to say someone is beautiful is a compliment, but to fetishize them is a totally different thing. And you're basically weaponizing. Suddenly your own identity becomes a weapon to yourself because they've turned you into that. So, because she's this, you know, these individuals were Asian sex workers. Okay, so they got gunned down. Whatever. No, it's not whatever. It's not okay.
And it was victim shaming. When you
yes,
think
it's
about,
victim shaming. Yes.
I love that you talked about, so the gunman, for those that don't live in America, was a young Caucasian man. I think it was like in 1920, a self-proclaimed sex addict. And he targeted these massage parlors. Yeah. So we don't even know if these women were just going there for their day job.
Exactly.
And suddenly these women got vilified. Yes, and instead of being the victim, suddenly they were shamed. Yeah. And they were targeted, and it was methodical.
Exactly.
And so let's go back to that fetishizing. I think that's really important for young people to understand that you are a human being. You're not a caricature. You're not a sex symbol. Yes. And how wrong and degrading that is.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, you know, it's terrible. I can't remember the actual, it was a law that from like, I think 1831 or something, where Asian women were not allowed to migrate to America because they were considered, because they just assumed that they would be prostitutes, you know? And it's just like, whoa, you know, our entire existence has been colored by has been hypersexualized because of someone else, not because of us at all.
It's not your narrative. It's someone else's narrative.
Yes, exactly. Or like our narrative has been shaped by someone completely outside of us, and we are now being subjected to all these weird, crazy like violences, and it's just like, what, you know what I mean? And absolutely, it's a big one, I think, you know. And I think it does boil down to visibility, representation, you know, like Asian women not just being like a hot like sex object or like kung fu fighting sex object, you know what I mean? Like we're people. We're just normal people.
So I'm assuming for both of you, there's got to be this fear factor, because I know that both of you were so engaged in Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. You're activists, and this is a year of social protesting and racial reckoning, and then the violence. And we saw these acts of violence in a subway in New York, or on the streets of San Francisco, or an older woman in San Jose. So we started seeing these moments that were deliberate and targeted attacks. So did you personally ever feel afraid? Did you ever feel judged when you left your cocoon, your bubble, and went out into the world?
I feel like that right now. I never had to feel like that before. But now, as the media is bringing this to light, I now have to look left and right when I enter the car, or you know, I don't know if I'm parking my car next door and so-and-so next to me is feeling triggered, and all the things that I'm the like, you know, because of you, the coronavirus, which I have no clue, you know what I mean? So it's like, and I'm fearful now. I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, I can't live normal lives. I can't go to the grocery store without thinking that I'm being judged, or, you know, going shopping or being treated differently just because of the way I look. Like, what is happening right now? I felt that growing up, but now it's like, it's everywhere.
Have you felt that as well?
You know, I think for me, it's been a really weird, I've been dealing and coping in a very strange way, because I can be very just like, hold on, don't want to deal. But basically, like, for me, it's kind of been from the outside. It's like more from coming from my outside circle and then circling into me. So I am the most anxious right now. I just keep thinking about like my parents and my aunts and uncles, because so many, you know, elderly Asian people have been targeted, and I'm just like, and they go to, you know, they're out and about. Like, they're not, of course they're at home most of the time, but they're going to the stores, they're going, my dad's getting gas somewhere, and I keep thinking like, oh my God, what if something happens, because they're so helpless. Right. So that is something that's like constantly on my mind. And then as I started hearing more stories, then I started thinking about all my like, just as like all the Asian women and men too, but like most specifically Asian women in my life, they're like my friends. And I'm just like, my heart, I get so scared, I get really anxious. I'm like, oh my God, I hope nothing ever happens to them when they're like walking to their car or anything. And then when I think about me, I'm just like, ooh, someone better try. I'm just like, I'm in that place right now. I'm in that place. I'm so mad. I'm like, someone better try me right now. And I don't mean to, like, I don't want more and more violence to keep exploding on the streets. I don't want that. But at the same time, you know, I just need to express that I'm so angry, and like, I'm so just like in this place of like, I don't know, like I'm just ready to, I just want to fight fire with fire. But that's just me like kind of processing everything, and like, and there is a little kind of monkey on my back that is fearful, and it's just like, dude, be careful. Like, and when I do stuff, I've always, of course, as women, we always feel that way anyway. Whenever we go somewhere, we're like, oh my gosh, like there's always creeps everywhere, whatever. But now it's like, oh my gosh, racialized stuff. You're like, damn, some random ass person could just cause a stunt, you know, and it's just like, and you don't even know.
I love that Jackie talked about it was the older, more vulnerable who seem to be the targets, and people in the age of cell phones, thank God, we're seeing these images of elders just walking and being attacked and pummeled, and sometimes fighting back, thank goodness. But because your mother is elderly, what is that fear for you? You know, you were already afraid with the pandemic, and now it's the fear of she's lived through a war. There can't be a war in this country, and it's an invisible war.
Yeah, now I'm like fearful for her to even walk out the house, just because, or anybody to walk out the house. I'm just afraid. Like, why are they being targeted? They can't fight back. And then within the Asian culture, they're not gonna be loud about it and express it, or you know what I mean. It's just in our culture we're taught to suppress things. It's kind of like, you know, there's a mentality within even my culture. I don't know if it's yours, but it's like the more you pressure, you just like, oh, you're gonna fail. But it's kind of like the backward thinking, like you're gonna fail, but so you can win. You know what I mean? So they don't like to compliment you. They like to put you down so that you can bring yourself up. So with this is coming up, you know, they're kind of brace it, and that's not acceptable. Like, why do you have to hurt somebody who's so innocent? And I tried to explain what's happening to an 8-year-old, and he was like, and I asked him, did you create the coronavirus? Because he's Asian. He's like, no, I don't know anything, you know? And it's like, but that doesn't make sense, Auntie. I'm like, exactly. How do you explain racism to an 8-year-old? He's like, I don't agree. Like, if you have issues with somebody, why do you have to take it out on them with violence?
And it's not just the it's the words. Let's go back to the words. What I love, you're a writer, and your livelihood is through words. And what I love that you were able to do in your stories is to identify those words that are really hurtful. And so I want to talk about when people stand idly by and don't say anything. Like, if you've been in mixed company before and you've heard something racist, I believe that the freedom riders are now in a place where we stand up and we speak up. But not everybody does that. So have you ever been out and about and called something so horrifically racist, and people went about their business, and people didn't interrupt, and people didn't say that's horrible? Has that ever happened to you?
Oh yeah, it has. Like, oh yeah, Chinese. Oh, you know, you guys create the coronavirus. Like,
They've said that to you. They've said that to
yeah,
you.
like, oh yeah. Like, I sent some Chinese New Year because I'm half Chinese. Oh, that's the coronavirus New Year. Oh my God, I'm like, and that's my friend. So they're not my friend anymore. But I was like so ignorant.
Have you ever been called a derogatory or racist term, and people didn't stand up for you?
Well, yeah, when I was a kid, like growing up in elementary school and middle school, yeah, I mean, it was the bullying and stuff like that for just being, it's interesting how, like, they would just call me Chinese.
Chinese, yeah.
And that's not like an actual, like, to be Chinese, there's nothing wrong with that, but to just have that just be, like, vilify you.
Correct.
And it's just like, well, you're Chinese, oh, little Chinita, oh, duh.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like, yeah, little China or whatever, and you're just like, okay. And that was like, it would just be like groups of kids doing that, you know, and it's just like, okay, and you just had to.
And teachers didn't intervene, or
it was just never talked about, like, really, and
how do you go? Who do you say it to?
Yeah, and it's so embarrassing. Yeah, it feels kind of. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, then you feel ashamed and embarrassed. Yeah, and it's almost like you kind of like take on the blame for whatever reason, and then you just don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah,
you know, and it's really sad, but you internalize all that pain, and I think, you know, as we're talking about, like, with words and everything, it's like, it's this like violence of the mind. It's this violence in our words, you know, that is not now like it's being enacted in so many ways, which is so like terrifying, you know. But it absolutely starts with the language. It starts with words.
So I love that our audience is always this beautiful fusion of, you know, really proactive parents, you know, talented teachers, and then the youth. And so if you could look right at that parent or that teacher, tell them the importance of words and about not standing idly by and not being silent when they hear these things. Like, give them a mandate, give them a mission to leave this call to action feeling emboldened. What could you say to those individuals?
I would say, like, if you hear something, I think that sometimes you need to be an advocate for somebody else who doesn't have a voice. Because sometimes, most of the time, the person who's being the victim doesn't know and probably is not used to having to stand up. So if you hear somebody making kind of comments that are not respectful, they say, you know what, that's not really nice. Well, why did you have to say that? We should become a society of that. That's not okay. Or within our own family, within our communities, and even as we see it, that's not okay to make those remarks. Like, why are we being picked? You know, what is this becoming? And what are we continuously to allow? And it starts with the words. Starts with, like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it. You don't know the effects and the trauma of that one word. Calling that person that dark skin, that ugly, you don't know how much damage that person, that can really eat at that person.
I think my favorite scene of you in the feature film, Jackie, is the character Ava, who's your friend April Hernandez, is having this kind of tearful moment with the teacher, Hilary Swig, who, it's so weird when I met her because she really got all my quirks down. She's a great job.
It's kind of amazing,
But Ava's kind of emotional, and you walk in, and throughout the film, you guys were rivals. And that simple gesture of makeup, and that simple gesture of you saying, I got your color, is so simple, and yet it's not simple. It's so profound. So I love that moment of two rivals coming together. And I think because you guys were both coming from a minority position, it was this beautiful kinship suddenly.
Absolutely.
So tell me what that scene was like to film, and did you know when you were filming it that it would be one of those moments that made a lot of people weep?
You know, at the time when I was filming it, no, I didn't realize that it would be a moment that would make it was like a tearjerker. At the time, I didn't realize that. To me, I was just kind of like, okay, we're doing this thing. I just kind of stayed very like just grounded about it. Didn't try to think too hard about it. But at the same time, I always loved that scene. Even before, I was really looking forward to it because to me, it just resonated so much in the sense of like, for me growing up in LA, like as just like, working class kid that was getting in and out of trouble every now, and it just reminded me of, it was just so to me like universal, like this moment of like two girls, two strong women, like young women just being like, all right, we fought, all right, let bygones be bygones, you know what I mean? It's kind of just like, I felt like that was something that just really resonated with me at the time as a kid because I felt like I had so much like, just intense like craziness around me, and I feel like the only way you can get through it is to just like face that person and just like open, but it's only after kind of like basically fighting with them in a way. But and it was really awesome. I mean, it just felt like pretty magical.
It was magical.
But now that I look back at it, I feel like that scene is exactly what we need right now. This is about, and especially among women, but it's among everyone, like everyone just, it's about solidarity, it's about becoming a collective, and about recognizing each other's bleeding hearts and being like, God, like I have you, you have me, like let's do this, like let's just come together. Because I think I think it's so beautiful that so many people that like BLM totally supports Stop Asian Hate and has been very active about like supporting like Asian brothers and sisters, you know what I mean? And I think that's what we need right now. I think everyone needs, we've all been pitted against each other for so long because of all these different historical reasons. But right now, the only way to defeat that is if we just all come together and recognize like we have to fight together, And I think Ava and Cindy, that's exactly what they're doing in their small little, with the little like L'Oreal makeup compact, be like,
I got
your
your
color. You know what I mean? Like,
But it goes back to color again.
And it does the symbolism of that.
It's so beautiful. But
Beauty.
I
exactly.
But let's talk about makeup, because I think that I think what's really disturbing is in that color spectrum, the power and disturbing way of bleaching.
Oh my God.
And whitening, and that's like a whole industry. Can we talk about that? I think a lot of men don't know the pressures for women, especially in that spectrum with the freedom riders, with our African American freedom riders, our Latino freedom riders, our Asian Americans. There was always this feeling: the lighter you were within that particular ethnicity. And so, can you talk about that weird pressure of bleaching skin or whitening skin or not tanning, and how that's being perpetuated by the beauty industry?
Going back to what Jackie was saying, how that our skin tone, I'm born like this. I'm considered darker tone within my community, and so I get mixed feelings. And my older sister, she's fairer skin, so even within my own family, there's like this difference. And right now, what's going on is that they're selling beauty cream products that are whitening. And just most recently, a friend of mine gave me some samples of some whitening cream.
It's never ending.
We are not going to stand idly by. No silence among this crew.
Oh my
And
God.
she told me that for a whole kit, it costs $1,000, and I was like, "Wow!" And she's like, "Yes, you get your money back in 3 days." And I was like, "No, thank you. I'm just gonna
It's
accept.
insulting, isn't it?
I'm gonna accept my skin because I don't know the side effects of this product."
I mean, it's scary.
But it's huge business, and I know friends that they don't go out in the sun until it gets, the sun is like not it's high at like noon time. They're inside and they're covered up, and if they're driving, they have long sleeves. Driving, they covered up with hats, everything. They don't come out. Sunscreen all the way, whitening creams. Just because within our community, the more fair skin, you're treated as more prevalent, as more like upper class. And the darker you are, it means that you're from, you're a farmer, you're out in the sun, you're out in the fields.
So I think you guys are challenging a lot of what was considered the status quo. You guys are going to blow it up. Blow up the media, blow up networks, and blow up the beauty industry, because I think that a lot of people have made so much money off the backs of those stereotypes, off the backs of perpetuating discrimination. And so, like I said, it's not just about a statement. You have to do. So what if you could blow up something? What would you blow up that has oppressed or made you feel less than?
Why can't we just accept people as who they are? Just as your unique beauty that you've been blessed with. Like, why we have to look like so and so? Why can't you just be who you are? Embrace and acceptance. Beauty is that there's, even going back to myself, I have a gap in my teeth, and for a long time I tried to put braces to close it up, and then I just learned to accept and embrace my gap. Then I'm not.
Michael Strahan has a gap, and he loves it. That was his April Fool's joke. He actually pretended that he closed his gap, and then he was like, "I've been, had this gap for 50 years. I'm keeping it."
So for the longest time, I never smiled, and then I never talked. That's why I never talked in class.
She, and what kills me, Jackie, is Kanya's part of this beautiful college program that we're doing now at Waldorf University, and the stories that Kanya writes. They made me cry when she was in high school. They make me cry now that she's in college. But the way you write about when you were a child, I didn't know that side of you, because I just saw this little angel, this little lotus flower. I didn't know that tough side of you that was being bullied. I didn't know that tough side of you that was being chased home. I didn't know that tough side of you. The way you dressed in the film is how she dressed, baggy pants and What you don't know is Jackie had a little bit of an edge, and that was kind of the marching orders for the casting director and our screenwriter is find young people who embody freedom writers. So even though you didn't know Kanya, they did. Even though you didn't know Bunny, they did. So when they found you, it was almost like this accidentally on purpose.
Yeah.
So you kind of brought an edge to our film because you have a little bit of an edge, which I love, and I say that with the deepest of respect. Because you're scrappy.
I'm very proud of. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of amazing. I feel like Freedom Writers found me. You guys did find me because I was doing just like theater, like next in this really great nonprofit organization next to my high school. I went to Fairfax High School. I was doing this after school program just to keep me out of trouble, basically.
And you were a teenager.
Yeah, I was 16 years old. Yeah,
we love that.
At Greenway Arts Theater, Greenway Arts Alliance, Greenway Court Theater. And one of my mentors was just like, you know what, they're doing an open casting call for this movie. They're looking for real life, like kids, like, you know, and I think this sounds like you. And it's kind of funny because they were like, yeah, I think I saw a breakdown where it said like Asian and Latin maybe mixed or something. And then I was like, and then she was like, that sounds like you. I was like, well, I'm Filipino. You know, just kind of like this running joke about like Filipinos being like, you know, or again, like, Southeast Asian people being not East Asian being like the darker skin Asian, you know, as Ali Wong says, like the jungle Asian, the brown Asian, you know, and I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like I could go for that role, you know, and I showed up and I had never acted professionally in my life, but I was all punked out. I used to be a punk like then, you know, and like. And so I had hair similar to this now, actually, which is kind of funny. And I was just like really rough around the edges, and I just showed up and I just read, and they were like, you know, and then they kept calling me back.
It was a eureka moment.
Yeah, and then they just kept calling me back, and I was like, oh really? I went for fun because I just thought I was like, how cool would that be to audition for a movie? I could tell my grandkids that I auditioned for a movie when I was a kid. I just thought that was a cool idea, and I didn't think that I would get it. You know?
What I think was so amazing about the Freedom Writers, Kanya and Bunny didn't want it to be this polished actress from Disney or Nickelodeon. No offense to either of those institutions, but they didn't want someone who was 43 playing a 16-year-old. They wanted a 16-year-old playing a 16-year-old. So that I think is amazing.
Yeah.
I remember Hunter, who plays Ben in the film, having to defend your honor one day, and he was so excited because in the film he's the singular Caucasian kid.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a little skirmish on the set one day.
Yeah.
I think with an ex-boyfriend of yours.
Yeah. Oh my God,
he was
that was terrible.
so excited.
That was drama.
Well, it was drama, but he felt like that as you were making the film, you were having this parallel life that the Freedom Writers had.
Yeah.
You guys became a family.
Yeah.
You guys were growing together, and so for him to defend your honor,
Oh my God.
felt the way Freedom Writers felt when they defended your honor.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you realized for Hunter, that was a really cool moment. It was scary.
Yeah.
But it made it a little bit real that that you guys were becoming a family as well.
Oh my God, yeah, it's insane. Oh my God. Ugh. Yes, I mean that whole thing was crazy. It was very just like, oh my God, yeah, because I felt the whole experience for me was very surreal because I come from a very like working class family where they're just like, just stay in school, stay out of trouble, and like just please don't just all these things of like they didn't really. It was just very like, how am I on this set right now? Like, how am I in a movie right now? It's insane. Like, that was not something that I felt like anyone would have ever imagined for someone like me. Like, that was so insane. I was like, that just changed my life completely. Mm-hmm. And so when the crazy ex-boyfriend came on set and caused a ruckus, I was like, oh my God, this is like my crazy life, real life. Like I grew up in K-Town, Koreatown, and like, I was just like, oh my God, this is like my really kind of ghetto ruckus life coming on here and kind of ruining it. I'm like, no.
But that's our life. That's why we love you.
Yeah, so it was just like
you're with your people.
Oh my God, it was insane, and I'm extreme. Oh my God, yes, thank you.
You were with your people.
Yes, I'm like, thank you, universe, thank you.
So speaking of being with your people, how could we take listeners and watchers and make them feel that they're always with their people, regardless of skin color, shades, hues, sides of the street they come from. I think what you guys have really done, like passionately, is besides making everyone cry, to feel that they can stand up, to feel that they no longer need to be silent, to feel that they can confront somebody in the line at a grocery store or in a classroom or even on a Zoom meeting. So what could be something that you could tell to the youth now who are watching, who are impressionable, who've read your book, who've seen your movie? What can you directly tell a child to stop the madness?
I would say that if they see anything or hear anything, stand up, tell somebody, speak to somebody about it, get it out of their system, to be seen and be heard, but not from a place of violence. We don't need to go there. Don't fight fire with fire.
Did you hear that?
I know. I tell myself every day.
Be the bigger person.
Yes.
You know, I really think that we need to get rid of this race thing. We're all one human race. We're different countries and location and have different styles and beauty, but we're all one earth and it's one humanity. Whenever we think like that, it's more holistic. When we separate ourselves and think, and then it becomes like, oh, I'm better, you're this, I'm that. No, it's not. We all bleed the same. We're all feeling the pain. You know, the pandemic has taken lives, bring about issues that we never wanted to think about and talk about. It's all coming out to surface. That because it needs to be addressed. The more we oppress it and suppress it and saying that everything's all right, it's not all right. It's coming out for a reason. And it's coming out for a reason not so that we can perpetuate the same thing that's been happening. It's coming out for a reason so that we finally detox this and get rid of it. Because I am sick and tired of this shit.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
And did you hear that, kids at home? We don't censor. Accidentally on purpose. Can you see the embodiment of this spirit? You were chosen for a reason. So in that spirit and in that feist, take that fire that you have. And what would you say to a kid at home?
No, I mean, absolutely. I'm, just to piggyback on everything Kanya just said, absolutely say something, take action, but also express. I think, the more we suppress, the more we repress, that's the more the violence inside boils over, and then all these ugly things start happening and coming out in all these weird ways. Absolutely, I agree with everything Kanya just said, but I think, the number one thing is to always, and it sounds a little cheesy, but it's absolutely true. You have to have hope and you have to believe, and it has to be unwavering. Like it starts in deep down inside. You have to believe and know that you are strong, you are worthwhile, you are, and the same thing goes with everyone around you, that we are in this together. It has to be this unwavering belief that, like, I'm human and we are all human and we can really come together and do this. Because I think, and you in order to, I think, really believe in that, you have to have hope. And I think so much of the violence that's happening is coming from a place of just devoid of, like, no hope, of hopelessness, of sadness, of trauma, of feeling forgotten, of feeling invisible. And we need to remember and we need to believe we are visible, we are here, and we count. Absolutely, 1,000%.
You read words for a living. I think you need to write words for a living. Spoken from a fellow best-selling author. That was amazing. That's a drop the mic moment.
Hi, my name is Jackie Ngan, and I'm here to say stop Asian hate.
Hi, I'm Erin Gruwell. Join us in stopping Asian hate.
Hi, I'm Kanya Sims. We need to stop the Asian hate as of now.